Okay, so I wanted to share with everybody a little bit about this mission trip that I just did. Hi, Alan. So the backstory is a couple years ago, you guys know how we do the Bausch and Lomb course every quarter? Well, one of the doctors that comes down for that course, a guy named Tim Page, he's involved with this organization called KenyaRelief.org. It's a volunteer organization that basically started with an orphanage in Kenya, but then started offering medical services like over 15 years ago. And every year he goes to Kenya and takes a team of eye doctors and does kind of mission work, volunteer eye exams, brings a team of ophthalmologists, workup techs, optometrists, surgeons, and just general helpers to provide this to this remote area of Kenya. So I decided to join him on this trip. He invited me, so I took my oldest son Alex, who's going into his senior year of high school and doesn't know what he wants to do with his life. So I thought maybe this would be a good opportunity to bond with my son and maybe show him how lucky he is and how lucky we all are to live in the world that we live in. So we took a long flight. I had never been on a 747 before, so I figured I'd take a picture. This is the flight from London to Nairobi, which is the largest city in Kenya, one of the largest cities in Africa, one of the most developed cities in Africa. And then from there we did an 8-hour drive in a van on dirt roads. So I traveled from here to Charlotte, and then an overseas flight to Charlotte overnight, a 2-hour layover, then an 8-hour flight from London to Nairobi, and then an 8-hour car drive into a remote region of Africa. So it was like over 36 hours of traveling non-stop to get out there. The place we went is a place, as I said, you see Kenya Relief. It's a compound, basically, a guarded compound that's an orphanage. And the orphanage has over 100 kids whose either parents died of HIV or another disease, or were abandoned. So that's kind of the parent organization, is the Kenya Relief Orphanage. It's called the Brittany House, which was named after the guy who founded his daughter that died suddenly in college of a rare reaction to a drug, a medication she was on. And she had sponsored a child, an orphan. You know, you see those things on late night TV sometimes where you can sponsor a child for like 14 cents a day. Well, her daughter did that when she was 12. And this poor guy, when his daughter died, was trying to find some grasp of hope to hold on to his daughter's spirit and legacy. So he went and found this kid in Africa that his daughter had sponsored, and this was the orphanage that he came from. So then he decided to get involved and make this his real project, and now it's turned into it. But anyway, so they cook in this old style. This is a big old kettle cooking where they cook for 100 kids. When we arrived onto the orphanage, we were greeted by the kids. This is a church service that we went to. We went to a local church, and you can see how happy the people are in this region of Kenya. Kids are all involved with the church service and the singing, and just a very nice spiritual event. There's a lot of Muslims, there's a lot of Christians, but it's a very faith-oriented community, and the people are very happy. We went to visit some of the places where people live. One of the orphans, this is the home they came out of, that was rescued out of. It's kind of, you see the conditions that they live in. They had locked the door, but they wanted to show us that where some of these orphans come from. So very modest, surroundings that they live in. So this is the name. Brittany was the girl that died in college. He named the orphanage house after his daughter. And this is just pulling in here to the Brittany house. You can see they have it. It's kind of a guarded compound for the kids, which is nice. It was also safe for us. I mean, it was very safe there, but it was nice for us to have a safe place to stay while we were there. This is in front of the clinic. So you can see that's the reception. So he built this through donations from all over the country and all over the world. He built this clinic, which is, for us, it would look pretty awful. It would look like a pretty, but for there, it's a pretty amazing building. You know, there's no air conditioning or anything like that, but it's a roof and brick walls and a safe place to go, and they have exam rooms, which I'll show you, that we went to. You can see here, this is just outside the clinic. You can see all the patients lined up here, all waiting to see us. This is actually the very first day that we showed up. The clinic wasn't even open. It opened the following morning. These were all people that were going to spend the night there, waiting for us the next day. We went to get the clinic supplied. This is the fees. They figured out that they needed to charge the patients something, or they didn't have a sense of appreciation. So you might not be able to see this, but when you get down to like the cataract surgery here, it's kind of crazy, but you have, see here, cataract surgery, 1,000 shillings, which is $10. Okay, so cataract surgery is $10. It's $30 with general anesthesia. An eyelid procedure is $20. A total abdominal hysterectomy, $50. Mastectomy, $50. And then all the lab tests. Malaria, brucellosis, helicobacter, stula and ova for cysts, that for parasites, salmonella, malaria, syphilis, HIV. I mean, this is the common testings that are done for all the different infections and things. So it's a full-fledged clinic there with a staff, no surgeons, no eye surgeons. Setting up instruments the first day, we had to go through all the instruments and get what we needed for cataract surgery. We started seeing patients right away. This is a ruptured globe that came in that had been that way for a month. Okay, we saw a lot of stuff that we couldn't fix. Cataracts so bad that they busted open and pushed the iris forward and caused angle closure glaucoma, stuff that we couldn't fix. Intraocular penetrating foreign bodies that we couldn't fix, that the eyes were too far gone. So it was very sad to see a lot of patients that we couldn't do things for, but some of them we could. Some of them, most of the patients that we saw were blind from bilateral cataracts. So in other words, their cataracts had gotten so bad in both eyes that they were blind. They had no access to care. The operating room was set up like a MASH unit. Anybody see the show MASH? Remember that? That's what it was like. It wasn't a tent, it was a real building. But we had one room where we had 3 different surgical stations showing up. Okay, so 3 surgeons, 3 tables, all in one room. This is the example of what all the cataracts look like. But they had these in both eyes, completely white. Patients were completely blinded by these cataracts. Tons of eye cancers on the surface from the chronic sun exposure. I took off probably a dozen cancerous or precancerous or benign lesions that looked like this. All sorts of crazy growths on these patients' eyes. This poor young lady, she was blind in both eyes from keratoconus, where the cornea is ruptured. And she didn't have corneal care, so she was blind in both eyes. She needs corneal transplant. We didn't have the resources or the corneal tissue to do that, or I would have done that for her. More cancerous eyelid lesions. Most of the patients come from the Maasai tribe, which is a pretty prominent tribe in that part of Kenya. And you can tell because they wear the big donut earrings that people have seen here. It's kind of trendy in the U.S. a little bit, and a lot of piercings. But bilateral white cataract, that left eye had a corneal scar that was blind. Children with all sorts of stuff. This young boy with this heavily pigmented lesion on his conjunctiva, I excised that for him, sent it to pathology. We're waiting to find out what that is. Bilateral white cataracts in this tribal woman, bilateral white cataracts, one after the other. So our goal was to treat as many people as we could and restore blindness. So we would just do one eye on these blind patients to at least getting one eye seeing good, because we didn't have time to take care of all the cases there were. This poor woman came in with a proptotic eyeball. she probably has a malignant cancer in her orbit, undiagnosed. So we saw about 500 patients over 4 days, just one terrible disease after the other. So it was very frustrating and very sad to have to take care of these people, a lot of which that you couldn't do anything for. And that was probably the hardest part for me, was to leave all these people behind that I couldn't help. But we did get to help some of these kids, and this poor little guy had this big tumor on his conjunctiva that was bothering him terribly, so we excised that for him. Huge pterygium that was growing across the vision that we had to take off. It was really great for my son to be there to help with the kids and stuff, and he had a good time taking care of them, and really enjoyed that aspect of bonding with the patients. A lot of the patients traveled for hundreds of kilometers to come. They had heard in months and months in advance, so they would make a pilgrimage basically to this community where this was set up. And after the surgery, we just let them sleep everywhere because they couldn't go home. So they just sleep all over the clinic wherever there's an open bed. So it's like an indoor-outdoor type of building, but basically that's Tim. He's the leader of the mission. But you can see there's just people everywhere. See the post office? This is leaving at 10 o'clock at night when you're done. Poor people just sleeping out everywhere after their cataract surgery so we could see them the next day. I mean, it's kind of like a war zone in a way. But these people, they're in their 80s and 90s. They're just sleeping on the floor. They have nothing. A lot of these blankets that they wear at the Maasai, you'll see this is what they wear. So they're completely self-sufficient. So they wear this, it's not a blanket, it's more like a sheet. And they wear it around them with the pretty colors. They just put that down wherever and sleep. And during the day they wear it. So they literally live with what they have. That's it. They're completely nomadic. You know, it's overwhelming to see the state that these people live in, and it really is an eye-opener of how lucky we all are to live in a society where we have so much opportunity and we have so many resources to live a very comfortable life. And for any of you that are going through times in your life that you think are, you know, inhospitable, we just really don't have any reference point as to really how inhospitable life some of these people live. But you can see them just sleeping, camping out everywhere. These are all patients that we did surgery on. And there's Alex, he's hanging out with his boy. They're showing him his iPhone and playing video games. But it was really overwhelming to see what was going on with the people. Yeah. So he was having fun with them. And we did this basically for 4 days. It looked just like this. It just kind of was 4 days. We slept for a couple hours here and there, but it was basically non-stop like this for 4 days of working and taking care of these patients. Had an amazing team. There was about 20 of us, and everybody just gelled really well, and we just did everything we can over 4 days. The patients were extremely grateful. Many of them had been blind and were seeing for the first time. You can see that they're happy to be there, and they're very grateful. They're very stoic people. They don't give a lot of expression or emotion. It was very makeshift hospital. We just had to do things very efficiently and quickly, so there's not a lot of privacy. We're just moving them through as quickly as we can, as efficiently, working as a team. It's hard to believe that there were so many people in their 80s, some of them with no family, that somehow had learned to function and survive blind like this. You know, you can see that this patient has no vision, blind in both eyes. There's another patient blind in both eyes. It was honestly, it's just one after the other, blind patients from cataracts and other conditions. It's truly amazing. OR was just very much just try to get as much as we could to get done over those 4 days. We would just bring them in, and Alex would help bring them, getting them on the table, moving them out. We did blocks on all of them, so no IVs. These patients would just allow us to give retroorbital blocks, which are kind of painful. None of you would allow them to do that without an IV and with sedation, but these patients are so used to suffering that it's all relative. It was nothing for them. And they would just lay perfectly still on the table for an hour. Some of these surgeries took an hour and a half. They were so bad, they wouldn't move. No anesthesia. It's amazing. The cataract surgery was very old world. It was not using any of the sophisticated technology we have now. We didn't even have phaco. We had to basically make large incisions and manually extract the cataract the way it was done 50 years ago. The power would go out during surgery. I'd be in the middle of operating and the lights would go out to be in complete darkness because power is on and off in that region of the country. It could be 20, 30 minutes, no air conditioning. Very challenging conditions to operate under. But you can see there the cataract, you know, they were these huge monster black and white cataracts that were basically, it's on a spoon. You just have to scoop that thing out. You can see it's almost as big as the eye itself. And then we would seal the eye up and put a patch on the eyes. Then we would get the patients to relax and recover. And you can see it just kind of turned into a kind of like a little hostel here for all the patients, just spreading out in the recovery unit. And you can see that it was just jam-packed the whole time, full with patients. We had to examine all the patients post-op day one, make sure the eyes weren't leaking, no endophthalmitis, knock on wood, we didn't see any post-op infections, or anybody that one patient required had to collapse their chamber, the eye head was leaking, we had to go back and put a suture in. But that was 1 out of 120, so we actually did really well, and the patients did great. There's Alex in the operating room with me. The patient was just coming up from cataract surgery. And you've got to remember, a lot of them are blind in both eyes, but then you do the surgery on the one eye, put the patch on, they're still blind until the next day. So we had to help them get to a safe place to spend the night and carry them. So on our downtime, our little bit of downtime, Alex built a little basketball hoop for them and played with the orphans. And he's here teaching them how to play basketball. No goaltending. We did our best to try to teach him how to play basketball. So we basically stayed on that compound. We stayed in the orphanage, which was a really nice experience. And really fun playing with these kids. There was another person there who brought their daughter, Naya, who's also in high school, so he had a peer to kind of share the experience with. This is one of the residents, so there was a resident with us that I trained on how to do the cataract surgery because they don't know how to do this type of surgery. So we trained him. The kids in the orphanage were wonderful, and they would sing to us every night, and we would wake up in the morning to them singing, which was really beautiful. While we were there, Alex decided to sponsor an orphan. So one of the kids who really liked basketball, he kind of took to him. So he's got kind of like a little brother over there to follow, and he'll, as you know, you also are working here, he'll take some of that money and he will send it over to Kenya and support this kid, which is kind of cool. So after doing that for 5 days, we were pretty tired. Everybody was pretty exhausted. It was very draining physically and emotionally, and you can only keep that type of intensity after so long. So they've determined that's about the amount of time that a team is productive for, just like we all only have so many hours that we can be productive and function well. And after about 4 days, we stopped and started making our way back home to Nairobi. But on the way, we stopped in one of the Maasai villages where a lot of our patients came from, so we could see what their culture was like. They live in these, you can see back behind her, they build these compounds or like a circled wall around their village, which the village is maybe the size of this building property, maybe the size of our property and the first parking lot here, and they build these thatch wood things to keep the animals out, keep the hyenas out, keep the lions out. Okay, and that's where they have their villages. We watch them do some of their cultures of how they start fire with little sticks. We saw where they lived in these. This is made out of cow dung, and thatch roofs. Okay, this is how they live. This is the son of the chief of the village, little baby goat hanging outside. We watched one of their rituals. When they don't have water in the dry season, they get their water or from the cow's blood. So they shoot with an arrow the cow's blood out of the jugular vein, and they fill up these gourds. They don't kill the cow, they just tie it down temporarily, and then they fill up this gourd, and then they can drink the cow's blood. And that's how they get nutrition in the dry seasons. And then once they have enough, they'll let the cow back up, and the cow's fine. So we got to see some of their traditions, how they live, survival. So, they would drink the cow blood. Okay. I tried it. Wasn't too bad. No. You didn't try it. Watch some of their dancing that they do and sing. The women were dressed in their beautiful garbs that they wear and beautiful beads. And then on the way back to Nairobi, we went through a game park, okay, where we got to see some animals. We got to see elephants, Cape buffalo, have a beer, celebrate our work, lions, hot air balloons that were going over the Maasai area, the Mara there, looking at animals from above. Just a beautiful experience. And hanging out in the Mara with the animals. So we had a nice little kind of, I won't say a reward, but a nice little relaxation for a day. This is on the border of Tanzania, where we were there. And they actually served us a meal out there. They took us out in the Mara, and there was animals on the horizon. It was very, very cool experience. And saw some more animals, hippo. National Geographic was out there filming, which was kind of cool to see. Beautiful, very peaceful. Nice to see how they're protecting all these animals out there. And that's Tim Page, who many of you maybe have met or will meet when he comes down here from Detroit, who invited me on the mission. And that's just leaving the game park. And then on the way out, just a couple of images of what it's like in Kenya. You know, just wherever you go, you see these villages, nothing fancy, everything's dirt road, there's not a lot of pavement, except near the big cities, and it's just filled with happy people, very brightly dressed in bright colors, and you know, a very content society. They don't have much in Kenya. This is you know, people that live along the side of the road. These are the little shanties that they live in. These are their houses and some of their workplaces. Nothing more than, you know, a couple 2x4s and some metal corrugated aluminum and aluminum roof. And it's just one after the other. They just keep building onto each other. And this is where most people live. This is a very typical lifestyle here for them. Trucks, people just piled with their animals in their trucks. These are all goats up in here. People riding up on top, catching a ride. Yeah, that's pretty much the last 10 days that I had. So I thought I would share with you guys. Yeah. Any questions?
You're going back?
Am I going back?
Yeah.
What was the temperature?
Temperatures, it was in the 80s during the day, and then at night it went down into the low 70s. Low humidity, so it was very comfortable. So the climate, it's temperate there in that part of the world, so they don't need a lot of air conditioning. You can get hot, but it was comfortable. A little hot in surgery.
So you were able to help 129 people?
We saw over 500 patients, and we did surgery on about 130.
Where's Kenya Relief located?
KenyaRelief.org. I think they're
Were you
in Alabama.
No, I mean, like, where were you in?
Migori, which is Nairobi's kind of in the middle to the east. This is the west side of Kenya, close to Tanzania border.
But can you release that of Alabama?
Kenya Relief, the home U.S. office. And if anybody wants to get involved, please let me know. Does anybody want to go with me on the next one? Okay.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, if anybody wants to get involved, please let me know. Very worthwhile on many levels. Any other questions?
What was the flying time, about 30 hours?
Yeah, 30
Oh,
hours.
wow. Yeah.
How do you communicate with them?
Well, they're all taught English in school. And their schooling system is surprisingly good, and they try to get all the kids in school. Many of them can't afford it because it does cost, and many of them can't travel to school, depending on where they're located. But they're all taught English because it was a former British colony, Kenya was. So it's still left over that they teach English. So many of the patients have like a broken English, and we had interpreters as well that speak Swahili. Good question. Anybody else?
How many surgeons did you have there with you?
We had 4 attending surgeons, experienced surgeons, and then 2 residents that would assist, and then we would trade seats like I do with Dr. O'Neill and kind of teach.
So you were able to train one person to do that?
2.
Which is 2 people?
Yeah, 2 surgeons we trained to do that, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
But they don't stay there.
Oh, they don't?
No.
Oh, okay.
They have no surgeon available. So every 6 months there's an eye team. So they stack up the patients, they put the word out, and then every 6 months, it turns into kind of like that when they all show up.
So that's most likely when they'll get their second eye fix, or you think they'll just stay with?
They won't get their second eye fix because when we show up next time, there'll be 200 more people that are blind in both eyes. We'll only be able to do one. So we can only restore sight to one eye because we don't want to leave somebody blind and give somebody 2 good eyes when we can take somebody who's completely blind and at least give them 1 eye. There's more patients than we know what to do with. I'll show you how many patients there were here in front of the clinic. It was clinic here showed all the people that were waiting.
Dr. Rob, when do you think you might want to go back?
When would I go back? I would probably go back either next year, a year from now, or 2 years from now, depending on how things are going. We really could have used scrub techs. Maybe some of the scrub techs will go with me. Could have used an optometrist. Could have used a scribe. Just kidding.
I've done cataract surgery once.
Okay.
Right?
Could have used some surgery counselors. Honestly, there is so much room for people that could help. There's so much to do, so many patients to take care of. So yeah, so maybe again, in the future.
What kind of food did you guys have?
We ate what the orphans ate, basically. So a lot of rice and beans, some vegetables, nothing fancy. There's not much eating going on. A lot of the people on the trip brought Cliff Bars and oatmeal and whatever we could really have. We didn't eat much, just enough to get by. At the orphanage they had a water bubbler where they would bring water, so we would fill our water bottles with that so we had clean water to drink. And we all got shots before we went, and everybody has to take anti-malarial medication for a couple of days before, while you're there, and then a week after. And then you have to wear lots of bug spray because you don't want to get bit. So do everything. Malaria is the biggest risk, and then obviously working with the patient's HIV. A lot of these patients were HIV positive, so we had to be careful during surgery, obviously, make sure there's no needle sticks. or any contamination. So that was important. That's standard protocol for everywhere. But yeah, everybody was healthy. Some people get a little GI bug, you know, from the change in the food and stuff, but nobody, knocked on wood, got sick or had any problems. And they've been running this mission now. Well, Tim, my buddy Tim's been on it for 10 years, and he's never had a team where anybody had a major problem. A couple asthma attacks from all the dust on the road, because you drive on dirt roads for hours. But besides that, not really any medical problems, fortunately. And yeah, it was very, very interesting experience. I had not done one of these before. I've been wanting to, but the timing was never seemed right. And the timing never really seems right because we're all so busy. So, you know, it just kind of came together, and I figured it's now or never. You know, work will always be here, and it sheds a lot of perspective on how good our patients have it, how good we have it, and yeah, how fortunate we are, and it feels really good to give back. You know, it really has no meaning to what you do every day. Thank you guys for your attention.